long has there been the CCL
for about a year, I think. A little over a year.
Okay, this is on the internet site.
It's on the internet.
So it's all, we're all set. It's all connected, talking to Wi-Fi, is what I'm trying to say. Now, you're gonna need my webcam too?
I don't think so. We have.
Sabrina said she wanted my webcam and my tripod. I guess that was to record my session.
Yeah. We brought a thing for that. Yeah.
Somebody, do you want to take this now, or
Um.
should I hold on to it for a bit?
Yeah. Can you actually sign into that Zoom network? There was a link sent to you. Are you able to sign into that?
There was by email.
Yeah. Sent on the 20th.
Okay.
Wait, I was just making into breakup. I'm sorry, I was just meeting Priscilla. Morning, I guess we could do it here. I just created a breakup room that I was just putting you into. But yeah, it sounds like you look good, you sound good. I have your slides, and you just to have them, and I'll open them from my computer. Yeah, I could say Priscilla brought her dad.
Oh, how cool is that?
Yeah, maybe they'll send them away to you. Okay, so I'll just go back to the main room, go get that, and then I'll run the class.
Okay,
Is that good?
good with me. You good with that, Dad?
That? Okay.
Yeah, you guys can name it right now, but that's it.
Okay, I'll turn my camera and my audience out.
Yes, that's why I was gonna put you in the breakout room, but it doesn't matter because it's at the end of the people right now. See you. Bye.
Okay, we'll see you in a couple minutes.
And then.
Can you actually visit our Citizens Climate Lobby YouTube channel? It's just Citizens Climate Lobby Mid-Atlantic, I think. It should pop up.
Did you want me to log into the Zoom meeting?
Sorry. Yeah,
I just did that.
Okay.
So I'm there. I see Mark Reynolds turned off his video, I guess.
Yeah. Sabrina needs to make you a co-host.
Now, what do you want me to do, Thad?
Oh, I was just wondering if you could find the CCL Mid-Atlantic YouTube channel.
So what is it? Just CCL Mid-Atlantic? And then YouTube?
Yep. I just want to check to see if we're actually live.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, it is. I'm showing the screen.
All right, Dad. Do you want me to run it from here? Then is that okay? I guess I'll just run it from there. I'll sit next to you.
So Thad,
Oh, perfect. So it's live. Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's really appreciated. I'm glad to see that's working.
yeah. I think I'm going to log out of the Zoom channel.
I think so. I know we're a little all over the place.
That's all right. I understand.
Everything working okay?
Well, I'm trying to lead the meeting and it's,
Oh, it's not here.
yeah.
Yeah, it's okay to be in there. She's going to spotlight Mark, so it shouldn't be any issue with you being in there. Because I want to.
Oh, there it is. I think,
All right, welcome everybody.
Everyone, please take your seats. We're just about to get started. Are we hearing me? Louder? First, turn up a little bit. Much louder?
Much louder.
Much louder? Is this better? Is this okay? Oh, thanks. That's it.
crank it up a little more.
Good morning. Welcome, everyone. Just thank you for being here for 2024 Citizens Climate Lobby Mid-Atlantic Regional Conference. It's really great to see you all here. Thanks for taking the time and joining us. We hope this will be a transformative weekend of connection, collaboration, and learning. And our theme this year is really climate legacy and inheritance, uniting generations for action. So it's great to see such an age range here, all coming together around effective climate solutions. For those I haven't met yet, my name is Thad Waterman. I'm currently serving as CCL's Mid-Atlantic Region Director, but please don't let the fancy title fool you. I really see my role as support to help all Citizens Climate Lobby volunteers in Mid-Atlantic do what they do best, some of which you'll see over the course of the next day and a half. Before we get started, just want to go over some logistics for the weekend. I really encourage everyone to visit our conference website. This is where you'll find all sorts of information, like our LinkedIn group, where you can connect with other CCLers and network for those that are here today, as well as our schedule. We'll have a whole list of everything going on, so you can make sure you're in the right room at the right time for what you're interested in. Our presenters, if you want to check out the bios, everyone that's going to be speaking today. We just have a really great group of people joining us, as well as some of the files. I really encourage you to check this out. There's a place to upload photos if you've taken any good ones from this weekend. A note before you go, a conference bingo that someone created. Just all sorts of videos to check out on the website. You can scan this QR code if you'd like. Also, just wanted to quickly kind of give a map of where we are today. So we're actually a little bit below on the Brinkley Commons atrium on the second floor. In addition to this room, we're also going to have classrooms 1088 and 1082, which will be down the stairs and then up this other hallway. And they're right next to each other. So definitely just want to outline that so you guys can kind of see. But we'll be back in this room for a lot of sessions as well as lunch. So make sure to be back here at 12:20 if you want to have some provided lunch. And lastly, I just want to say that this conference is only made possible by the hard work and dedication of a lot of volunteers. We just want to thank some of them today. So I'd love if our VA William and Mary CCL chapter volunteers could stand up today. Thanks so much for being our liaisons on campus and doing so much outreach on campus. Just a special appreciation for some of the leaders, Karina, Helen, Noah, and Courtney. Thank you for all you did to make this possible. I'd also like to ask our volunteers in the planning committee to stand up. I know there's a lot of them on here. This conference was 2 months in the making, and a lot of these volunteers met every week to make sure this was possible. A special appreciation to Peter, Beth, Chris, and Michelle for all they did to make this possible. Once last standing up, can I ask our speakers and moderators to stand up, please? Thank you for joining us today and for lending your expertise. There's all we can learn from you. These last two don't have to stand up. I also want to thank the College of William & Mary, as well as all of you who are here with us today. Thank you for being here. Really, the reason I wanted to do this is really to show that this truly is a conference put on by climate advocates for climate advocates. And we really hope you take every opportunity to network with everyone here today. I really truly believe everyone here has something to contribute. And with that, I'd like to turn things over to Chris Weigard, our amazing Virginia State Coordinator, to share a few words.
Thank you very much, Thaddeus. And welcome everyone to the Mid-Atlantic Regional CCL Conference, and welcome to Virginia and the College of William & Mary. We're blessed in Virginia for one of our state universities to be founded by Thomas Jefferson, but that's the one in Charlottesville. You are currently at the one that Thomas Jefferson attended. If you have any extra time while you're here, stroll down to Colonial Williamsburg, which looks pretty much the way it did when a very young Jefferson was in town. I hope that there will be many conversations between in-state and out-state CCL volunteers, and especially between the many college students here from William & Mary and a small group from the Virginia Commonwealth University over in the new capital of Virginia, Richmond. You're in the old capital of Virginia. In Virginia, we're proud to have so much history, although we've learned to not be proud of some of that history. Quite a bit of Virginia history doesn't really meet the requirements of CCL diversity, equity, and inclusion, but we can't change the past. We are here to change the future. If you want to know about CCL in Virginia, we're pretty much like CCL everywhere. Sometimes we have triumphs, like when we convince a member of Congress or a senator to sponsor an important bill. Other times we have tough times when legislators of either party don't engage. We need the things that every state and every chapter needs: better succession of leadership, more numbers of volunteers to engage legislators, more volunteers willing to try things that are new to grow their impact. If we can teach you anything, we'll be delighted, but we really are here to learn from you. I would now like to introduce the Executive Director of Citizens Climate Lobby, Mark Reynolds. Mark has been with CCL from the beginning, working to organize the values and the mission that were dreamed by our late founder, Marshall Saunders. On a day that you need a laugh, go to the CCL website and watch Marshall recount the origin story of CCL. Mark has really embodied those values of respect and humility that enable us to engage with legislators of both parties. I think that Ruth Bader Ginsburg might have been thinking of him when she wrote these words. Fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. Mark has led countless people to breakthroughs of personal political power in this way. But I need to let him speak for himself. Here he is, Mark Reynolds.
Oops, Mark's joining us still?
You heard that, I presume?
I hope so. Yeah. Sabrina, can you, sorry, you can't hear us, it looks like. Sorry about that. All the tech stuff is fun to figure out.
Hey, Mark, can you hear us? You're on.
Oops.
Hey, how are you? Good to see you. Glad you made it.
Yes, I can.
Sorry, this is Chris's wonderful introduction of you. You're ready to go?
Okay, good, I'm on.
Yep.
Okay, good, thank you. All right, hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Thaddeus and Sabrina, for inviting me. I would love to be there. Some of my favorite memories from regional conferences were being at the Mid-Atlantic Conference. The last time I was there in person was in 2019. We had the conference in Atlantic City. And, you know, we're doing such important and sometimes hard work. But for me, part of what the joy in it is just getting the personal connection, getting a couple of moments with people. And I remember the ride to and from the Atlantic City from the Philadelphia airport, and there was a couple who I didn't ask their permission, so I'm not going to share their names, but on the way back from Atlantic City, we were talking about why certain dogs live longer than others, why certain breeds do. You know, we're handling the big issues. But the funnest part for me was walking out to the car from the Philadelphia airport, and the woman looks at me and she says, "You own blue jeans?" So, we get in the car and we start riding down, and she says, "Mark Reynolds owns a hoodie?" So, I love those moments, and I hope that I'll get to see as many of you as possible in June. And I love, I was able to actually be there for the start of a lot of the chapters back there. I know Philadelphia is not part of the Mid-Atlantic region, but I bet that Peter Pan was there, and I remember going to Philadelphia to launch that chapter, and we did it in Peter's Synagogue, which was a former mill sitting over a river. It's this beautiful building. And Peter's a furniture maker, and he makes these beautiful pieces. So it was such a lovely setting. We had this large group of people in a circle, and it's still just distinct to me now as was then. I even have, Peter was the designer of the original CCL hat. So I have that. That's the first hat we ever gave out, and I still have it. So I just want to update you on a couple of things. You know that last year or 2 years ago, we expanded our focus, so we weren't just doing one thing. We were working on carbon pricing, urban reform, electrification, and healthy forests. And unless you're brand new to CCL today, you probably noticed that we've been doing a lot more work early in the election season this year. We don't ever work for candidates. We're nonpartisan. We stay out of that. But we do want to try and get more climate, environmental friendly voters so that if there's a primary, which is what we're trying to work on right now, and there's a Republican who's more climate friendly. If we get more climate, more environmental people to the polls, then hopefully that person will win the primary, and then the same thing in the general election. So you'll notice that we're doing some of that with the Environmental Voter Project, and we're doing some of that on our own. So you may notice that we're doing that much earlier in the cycle than we did in previous years. Okay, so there's two really big things happening in the organization right now that I want to kind of key in where we are. Last June, we started the process of selecting the next executive director. And I know since we started last June, we're still working on it. Yes, we are. So it's been a long process. We got over 400 applicants for the positions. At this point, we've whittled it down to about 10, and the board's doing interviews with those people. So I believe that well before the June conference, we will have identified the next leaders organization, and I'm very excited about that. The other thing that's been happening is there's been an enormous amount of work to refresh, you could say, who we are. You know, in 2007, we started organizations with two statements of purpose. One is creating the political will for a livable world, and the second was empowering people to have breakthroughs in their personal and political power. And that's held up for years, and it still holds up really well. 7 years ago, a volunteer came along. Her name was Leslie Beatty, and she said, I have a lot of background in marketing, and I think I can identify what CCL's key values are. And she did, and it was incredibly useful, and it made us understand ourselves better. You know, there's a line of thinking that says, people have power to the degree, to the level of distinction they have for seeing things. So let me see if I can get at that a couple of ways. One is, you know, we've been told that Eskimos see 26 times of snow. They don't have to say it's this kind of snow or that kind of snow. They simply see something different, and if they need to, it gives them power in that environment. So for instance, if they needed to build an igloo, they'd know what kind of snow to use. And then if they needed to hunt, they would know where to hunt because they could see it. It was obvious to them in a way that would never be obvious to you and I. You know, it's not that different than, you know, when you bought something new sometimes. Over the course of my life, I owned quite a few Hondas because the only thing I care about the car is, will it get you there? I don't care if it's fast. I don't care if it looks cool. I don't care what other people think about it. I just want it to be reliable. So one time, this is about 15 years ago, oh geez, probably 20, because I gave one this car to my kids. I was in a lot. I saw a Honda that looked like a color that I had never seen. So I'm like, cool, a Honda, but it's gonna be a unique color. So if you've never done that, or it could be an outfit, you know, you buy it, you head home, and the 15 minutes it takes you to get from the lot to home, you see 20 of them. You know, something becomes obvious that wasn't obvious before. So we are redoing that process with CCL. So we're re-looking at our values. We're re-looking at our vision. We're re-looking at our mission. We're re-looking at our theory of change. It's not that you're going to see something, I believe, much different than you've ever seen before, but it is, the process is designed to redistinguish the organization so that you and I have more power with this organization that I think many of you love as much as I do. So that process has happened with the input of, you know, thousands of forms that were set in, focus groups, an intense amount of work. And I think what you'll see is when the process is done, you and I will find that we have a way of relating to this organization that gives us additional power in doing so. Okay, Sabrina, if you wouldn't mind sharing my slides now. So I want to just share with you a reflection of Joseph Robertson, who heads Citizens Climate International, on former Senator McCain. And I think this really points to, you know, just like I was talking about, vision is who we are. So Joe wrote, Senator John McCain will be missed for many reasons, but I want to offer a personal reason, which I think we will all come to understand more deeply as time goes along. The senator was a giant of American politics. First and foremost, because he was willing to put aside his own comfort and convenience in order to meet a higher standard of service. This allowed him to act with an uncommon grace required to invite two men who beat him in his own attempts to win the US presidency to deliver eulogies at his funeral. John McCain understood that service to a democratic society is a challenge far richer and more transcendent than the question of who wins which argument on which day. It has been said that even his rivals loved him for this. I knew John McCain, as most people did, through his public persona, through his acts of service, through the incomparable history of valor and sacrifice that ensured his words would always carry weight. But I also had the good fortune to meet him and to share with him the gratitude of tens of thousands of citizen volunteers who work to make our democracy more human, more thoughtful, and more forthright in solving problems like climate change. Senator McCain looked me in the eye, thanked me for passing the spirit of gratitude, and as if it were a conversation he just always really happens to say, I know you're good. Your volunteers are doing remarkable and necessary work. They do the hardest thing they do is do a democracy, which is to sit down with people they disagree with, listen, share, trust, and have serious conversations where people like each other afterwards. He laughed at this, noting how rare it is in politics to that kind of advocacy keeps us all going. We need that more and more. He listened to my story about learning from my grandfather what civics and public service can and should be. Then Senator McCain told me about his own motivation to keep this in mind and to share it whenever I thought it would be useful. He said, our democracy depends on the goodwill of citizens who serve in small ways every day. So I've always worked to honor the service of all of those people. That is the highest honor, to be in a position to do that. And I'm not perfect, I'm the first to say so. But there's nothing more important than engaging in our civic process with principle and goodwill. Tell your friends to keep up the good work. I know I'm not alone in saying that Senator McCain proved himself even more remarkable in this kind of face-to-face meeting. He offered his wisdom, his support, his goodwill, and the authority of his long life of service, and yet somehow spoke to well-meaning people as friends and equals. He was generous in moments like this, and I know from people who know far better than I did that he would stick his neck out for good people in need of help. He understood the liberating power of solidarity. As President Obama said of him, when all was said and done, we were on the same team. We never doubted we were on the same team. What we'll miss most, I think, is John McCain's uncommon determination that it be known that if your intentions are genuinely good, or if you're working for a better future, if you will sacrifice comfort and convenience to ensure all people have the right to be free people in a free country, and you're a part of his team. We need that more and more. So I would just like to thank you for doing what Senator McCain says that it's the most important work there is to do in democracy. I hope you have a really, really great conference, and I hope to see as many as possible that I can see you in June. All right, thanks again for letting me be part of this. Have a great conference, everybody.
We've got one more speaker waiting to join us, so we're going to start right now.
certainly can sit. Yeah.
I'd like to sit closer
Yeah, sure.
here and see. You have Ellicott City,
Ellicott City, Maryland. Yeah.
Maryland.
How about you?
DC area, or where is that?
Oh, it's maybe an hour north of, closer to Baltimore than DC.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Richmond. I'm from
Okay. Oh, okay.
Richmond, just for the day. Yeah.
All right. Great. Welcome.
Purple down with another CCL. Yeah.
Very good.
Welcome.
So is there a
welcome
Richmond
to
chapter or?
Oh, sure.
There is.
Yeah,
Okay.
Chris, who's I
Chris
got in a
Wiegard?
little late. Yeah, he's sort of our yeah. he's
Okay,
our-
yeah, I know
he's
Chris.
leader. Monica Lewis was, and Chris has taken the reins. Ellie Sparks. Originally, I started when she was with,
Oh, okay.
with the Richmond chapter. So
All right. Cool.
yeah, those are
Very
our
good.
folks. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Sabrina Fu is the our kind of the leader of our local chapter. We're in Howard County,
Okay.
so that's kind of mid Maryland, I guess. But
Yeah.
anyway, well, good.
I've been moderately active for a long time. I've never been able to go to DC in June.
It's a blast. I'm
I've
telling
taught
you.
summer classes.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah,
what do you teach?
VCU.
Which?
Virginia Commonwealth, VCU,
What subject you teach?
organic chemistry.
Oh, really? So you're a chemist.
No, I talk about it. I'm not a chemist.
Okay.
I don't do it. I talk about it.
Okay. All right. Hey,
We're just waiting for Bob. Sorry.
okay.
Sorry, I kind of stole this for a little bit.
That's all right. That's all right.
No, I'm an obsessive tree hugger. That's how I describe myself.
Well, me too.
More than
Yeah.
anything.
I volunteer at this place, Howard County Conservancy. It's
Okay.
lots of trees there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I lead hikes there. Oh, yeah. Cool. Got it. Batteries greater than gas. Right.
I'm a founding member of the local electric vehicle.
What do you drive? I've been thinking about an EV myself. I drive a hybrid right now, but I want to get an EV.
I had I first got one 12 years ago, a plug-in, and so what was available is I got one, I like to say this, before the first Tesla was sold, 6 months I was driving a plug-in.
Okay.
If you don't count the Roadster, which was sort of an experimental limited run, but before the first Model S, was a Chevy Volt. So all that was available under, even after Tesla started, those were $80,000. I'm not, I wasn't in that.
Kind of out of sight.
I
Yeah.
don't do that. So you had a Leaf or a Volt, and the Leaf at the time was the original 80-mile one. I have one car in my family, so I needed the gas.
More miles
backup.
than that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I drove that one until that was one of the first ones they built, and then I got another Volt just before they stopped making them in 2019. And last summer, well, actually 2 years ago, is it today, when I made the decision when Russians started slaughtering their neighbors that I was never going to buy gas again. And so I didn't. For a year and a half, I had the plug-in hybrid, but I didn't buy any gas, so I restricted myself to, just local driving
Right.
or a very slow out-of-town trip.
Gotcha.
Plug it in at level 2 charging.
Oh, yeah.
But now I have a Bolt.
A Bolt.
A Bolt. So
Okay.
I changed one letter from a Volt to a Bolt.
I understand they're nice little cars. The people that I know that have them are pretty happy with them.
My
Unfortunately,
car,
GM is just discontinuing it, I guess, right?
they say temporarily, but I wish they'd kept doing the new one until the old one until the new one was ready. And they're still for sale. I read stuff every day about their availability. So they're starting to be, though, rare, I guess, as the last of the inventory gets sold. And so dealers have gone back to marking them up, that sort of thing.
Oh, really?
But I got, if you consider the tax credit, it's an economy car. And you don't hear that term anymore.
Yeah.
I think that's gone out of style. I got it for $22,000.
Wow.
And I drive for free.
Yeah.
Literally. My electric bill is $8. and that includes charging my car.
Nice.
Yeah, I have solar, obviously, so I put that up 6 years ago. So yeah, the EV-PV marriage is what I call it, the photovoltaics, the solar. So it's
I've been looking at cars too, and I was
Yeah.
thinking either a Model Y maybe, seems like a nice car,
it's the
or
best-selling car in the world.
That's right.
You
That's
may
right.
know that. Yeah.
Yep. Or another car that gets very good ratings. Unfortunately, there's no rebate on it. Is the Kia EV6?
The workaround is the lease. Anything is available.
Right.
They get the credit because that's a commercial transaction between the dealer and the supplier, the manufacturer, and so they can work that into the lease, that discount. But that's up to you to negotiate.
Right.
If you do it that way. So yeah, it's the thing I really disliked about the Inflation Reduction Act was the Koreans had some really nice.
They were really
it looked
leaders.
like they were working hard to do the right
Hyundais
thing,
and
and they were building American plants, but they weren't open yet. They're
Yeah.
making them in Georgia,
That's right.
and here you just sort of with a stroke of a pen. There goes the tax credit for
Yeah.
it. And I think, oh man, no phase in, no
I know.
just overnight.
I'm sure they were shocked by it as well, but I understand some Hyundai and Kia dealers are giving you $7,500 off up front, even though there's no tax rebate.
I heard so. GM was doing that as well with the Lyric, and then I think they got it back with the Lyric. The Lyric I might look at. The Equinox.
It's a Cadillac, right?
Yeah, but so I'm old and maybe going to treat myself because I've driven Volkswagens, Bugs and little cars, but they say it's a very nice car.
Really?
This is just one. This is
I like.
anecdotal.
I subscribe to Consumer Reports.
Yeah.
I like that because they do road testing, extensive road testing, and they say the EV6 is the best there is out there right now in terms of all factors. It's not just road tests; it's also reliability and features and what you get when you buy it. They're rated on a bunch of different categories, and right now it's the top-rated their top-rated vehicle. Model Y comes in, I think, second. I think the Mustang Mach-E is in there too, but that recently got bumped from the Inflation Reduction Act
I think
rebate.
they've figured out how to get it back.
Have they?
Yeah, it's weird. It sometimes comes down to a couple of components. It
Yeah.
seems like.
That's right.
And so, but yeah, there's definitely incentive for them to get that 7,500 back. But I think at least for right now, you're correct. I went to the car show. We did we had a table in there and a display in the Richmond Car Show last weekend. And yeah, they had the truck, the Lightning. I would never get one, but I guess I'm glad they exist. But that still gets the full credit.
Most mileage, I think, right?
What's that?
I think it gets the most range. The Lightning.
Yeah, but
I think it's like approaching 400 miles or something.
there's
It's quite a lot.
huge cost for that. It has to have a monstrous battery.
Yeah, it does.
So
Right.
there is a limit to the material.
it's heavy.
It's
Right.
not very-
Right. Okay.
not for me, but yeah.
Interesting. All right. Yeah.
Hey,
Welcome, everyone. We're about to get started on our preliminary panel.
sorry,
James Hollywood, nice to meet you.
James.
Can
Hi,
we
James.
minimize the chatter?
From Virginia?
I'm from Richmond.
Richard.
Put that on there. I got pens. I teach.
All right. Oh.
That's my
That was
two
quick.
black, two red. I always have two black, two red. A little obsessive about that. Where are you from, James?
Howard County.
Oh,
Same here, right?
okay.
He's a member of our chapter.
All right.
So we have a lot of conversation with that in, so we're gonna get started.
Did you turn your mic on?
Would you be able to just turn up my mic just a little bit?
Excuse me, we're about to get started. Can we get quiet, please? Can we test the mics? Switch it on.
So this is the plenary panel. and I will introduce our speakers, and then we will go ahead and get started. I don't think so.
You checked yourself?
Testing 1, 2, testing. 1, okay, all right, so thank you all for joining us this morning. So first off,
There. Something happened.
first we have Max Blaylock, who is the campus minister for the Wesley Foundation and a prominent community leader here at William and Mary. And he's deeply involved in to now in the William and Mary community. Prince Talley is an influential writer, editor, and mentor, teaching impactful creativity, especially in the face of the climate crisis. Princella is a former Citizens Climate staffer who now serves on the Citizens Climate Education Governing Board. She has an extensive background in entertainment, writing, and script writing, often collaborating with influencers, Fortune 500 companies, and renowned brands. Bob Inglis is the representative for South Carolina's 4th Congressional District, often considered the reddest district in the reddest state, from 1993 to 1999, and again from 2005 to 2011. He is the executive director of Republican.org, mobilizing conservative solutions to climate change. So to provide enough time for engaging discussion, we requested that each of our panelists keep initial comments to less than 3 minutes. We hope this allows for more focused thought and engaging conversation to delve in with deeper curiosity. So, if you could join me in welcoming our panelists. All right. So I'm going to hand the opening question up to Max and then bring it to the rest of our panelists. So, Max, what previous experiences have you done with intergenerational work or intergenerational climate work specifically?
Sure, it's great to be here. Thanks so much for CCL for having this conference and for Helen for facilitating this conversation. I've been thinking about answering this question. One, if a pastor limits himself to 3 minutes on any answer, that will be the first miracle of this conference, so we'll see about that. I was born into intergenerational work. I was thinking about it. I was born into a family where we already had 5 generations alive, and have been living that pretty much my whole life. Growing up in a small town in Alabama, growing up in a church and working between generations and living between generations my whole life. But as my career in ministry and particularly in campus ministry has developed, it's absolutely been about intergenerational work with young adults, with adults on boards and people we've been working together with in different service organizations and in different situations like that. And I was thinking, what is the most important thing about this work that we're trying to do in building coalitions and doing the intergenerational work? And I think for me, it's always about compassion and curiosity. That in meeting people, it's about seeing people as another person, another human being doing their best, and curious about what it is that motivates them and what it is that inspires them and encourages them to have the beliefs that they have. And that curiosity and that compassion is, helps me to kind of greet most people I meet as, another potential friend. And the other part of it, I think that is so important is the openness to being changed by another person. Because I can honestly say, I've been doing campus ministry here at William and Mary, I can't believe it is, I'm into my 14th year. And I can clearly say that I'm not the same person with my beliefs, with my values, with my actions that I was when I arrived back in 2010. And that's primarily because students have changed me. And the relationships with students and what I've learned from them have changed me, I think, for the better. Absolutely for the better. And that's one of the most important things. And then when it comes to intergenerational work around climate change, the work that I've done has been with Interfaith Power and Light organizations in Alabama and in Virginia. It's particularly in our particular campus ministry, we've been doing a lot of work with the activists, particularly Empower, fighting the Mountain Valley Pipeline and trying to stop that complete and utter environmental disaster, and see the work that people are doing across generations and across all kinds of divides to make that happen.
Yes, I'll pass it to you next, Princella, because I noticed the connection with you teaching impactful creativity and Max's compassion and curiosity. There's that next connection. So, go ahead.
Yeah, so I would say it started with my work because I was a very young person when I started in freelance journalism about 15 years ago. And that put me in the face and in the space of clients who were the same age as me but needed to connect with older folks, but also those who were older and they were brand building and messaging to younger people. So specific to climate work, I've mentored almost 50 people at this point to get them into media and messaging to the masses on how to talk about climate on a way that's engaging to people and digestible to everyone, not just to climate scientists and people already involved in the work.
And then, Bob, I'll pass it to you. What previous experiences have you done with intergenerational and intergenerational climate?
Helen, I'll have to chat with Bob through and see when he can come back up. Why don't you go ahead on to the next question?
We will move on to the next question as we sort out technical difficulties. So, Princella, the next question is for you. So many people join CCL to help implement system changes such as the carbon fee and dividend. This has come with many challenges and the need for patience, as CCL is approaching 15 years of advocating for this policy. CCL volunteers are increasingly seeing how long-term climate work is, and hence the need for intergenerational climate work. What is your vision on the human values that will sustain us to work intergenerationally as a diverse community to create a different future? Please feel free to share an experience that was your answer.
So I could say empathy and respect, but that's going to be the easy answer. The answers that we have all the time because we naturally need that to communicate with other human beings. So this is going to touch on something that Max already mentioned, human connection. And I'm going this route because I feel that when you're connecting with other people, it's important to acknowledge first, I have my own biases. We all do. And a specific story, I remember being in conversation with another woman, and we were having just this beautiful, deep, engaging conversation. And at some point I referenced we. And I said we in the context of us belonging to the same political party. She was like, oh, no, I didn't identify that way. And then I'm like, oh, mind blown, because it's something that we do sometimes. I think we naturally, when we like someone, you can have a bias towards a person in a positive way and say, hey, you know, this person has traits that I like, and it's natural that I want them to have something in common with me, especially politically. And then on the opposing end, if you see traits you don't like in someone, you say, well, maybe this person belongs to the party that I don't agree with or that I don't belong to. And that's not always the case. So why did I make assumptions about this woman? Well, because it was my own bias. I sized her up based on who I believe she should be. So bias sometimes can be with good intention favorable, just as it can be negative. So sometimes I think we should approach things with more of a grace and cautious leniency to accept that people are people. And if we're not building that human connection from a place of being able to say, I'm not perfect, neither are you, let's still have these conversations, then we're not going to be as far as we could in this movement.
Yes, you can follow up with that.
Okay. making sure. Yeah, the thing that I think about it, for me, the values that really move me have come from, I got to attend a seminar at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum a few years ago. And one of the most impactful things that happened, besides simply being at that seminar with about 19 other people for a week, and it was focused on Jews, Muslims, and the Holocaust. And one of the articles that we read by one of the leaders of the seminar was about these interfaith groups of women that were started by a Protestant pastor in Berlin in the 1920s to do charity and justice work. But as the rise of the Nazis occurred in the 1930s and beyond, a lot of those groups of women started doing resistance and rescuing work. And one of the things that the author said at the end of that article has stuck with me, that informs me on all the work that I do, whether it's personal or professional. She said three things. She said, and these are things that I try to remember to inform me. She said, one, just as collaboration with the Nazis was a social phenomenon, so was resisting and rescuing. And so much of the work that those women did would have been impossible if they hadn't been doing it in community with others. So the importance of us building communities. Two, and this is something that I have to remind myself, she said, ethical action is always social action. That whatever circumstances we're involved in and acting upon, the actions we're taking have a much wider impact than just those particular people and places. And finally, she said, in all the research that has been done about people who became resistors and rescuers during the Holocaust, there's one trait that's been universally found in every study. And that trait is all of those folks had a deep-seated commitment to the common good. That they had a moral and ethical center that moved them to work for what was best for people beyond their circles of faith, of family, of neighborhood, of ethnicity, of nationality, gender identity, sexual identity, race, whatever. So when it comes to us thinking about this work, it's those values that inform me, but it's also more too, as far as like the nitty gritty of the work, is that what I've discovered, we both have been talking about Princella and I, we were both raised in the Deep South, me in a small town in Alabama, Princella in a small town in Louisiana. And I'll speak for myself, I was raised to be nice and to be liked. And I have held that as like the highest value, particularly, you might notice, I'll just clear it up, I'm white, male, cisgender, heterosexual, Christian, socioeconomically privileged, able-bodied at the moment, every privilege box I check. And particularly looking to make sure that all the white people like me. Well, I've decided that that's not an important value if we're trying to do good work. And when I'm messaging and doing this work, the audience that I have in mind is not the people who are on the far extreme opposite of me. Honestly, I don't think I'm ever going to reach people like that in these conversations. My messaging is focused toward the people in the center right, center and left, all those folks, this conversation we're having, center right, who are being influenced by those extremes. And one of the examples I can give, and I know I'm running over time, happened right here on William and Mary's campus. It didn't have to do with climate change, but had to do with extremism. We had a hate group disguised as an anti-abortion group come to campus for 2 days. And our campus ministry and other groups set up a counter-protest area. They were in front of the library right over here. And we had a counter-protest area also nearby them, not engaging them. But what happened was they had these horrible billboards that were demeaning to people, treating people terrible. And we had a table with lemonade and cookies, and we had music, and we had signs, one of which I got to hold for a while, which was my favorite sign the students had made. It said, I wish I had all the confidence and BS of a mediocre middle-aged white guy. And students would come over and say, I just experienced this over there with them, but I come over here and it's music and it's joy and it's community. And that's what I think is so important in this. We want to offer an example to people, which kind of community and which kind of people would you want to be associated with, and do we want to continue to build?
And adding to that, the theme that Max has brought up, and also Sabrina Food mentioned it too in a previous conversation, was leading with curiosity. So what does that look like? I mean, when you're leading with curiosity, that looks like being willing to change your mind, being more approachable than you are opinionated. I mean, yes, that's not mine. It was in a Fast Company article, but it's still really good. So yes, hold your opinion, but don't let that end the conversation. I mean, whether you're on the left or the right, there was a Pew Research study in 2022, and what that study said was that people are growing increasingly frustrated with the left and the right. And almost half of young people actually wish there was different parties they can join. So we all have a lot of work to do, no matter what side you're on. There is no greater good when it comes to one being better than the other. And another thing Max touched on being privileged, we have to check that at the door in our own ways. We're all brilliant, incredible people here, very intelligent, but we're at a time where we let certain languages and phrases stop us from continuing the conversation that we need to have. I am far less concerned with making sure, because I was advised a few times, don't use the terms equity and justice if you're talking to people on the right. And maybe if you're talking to someone on the left, like myself, you don't want to use the term woke. And I'm going to dig into that a little bit simply because I don't mind someone saying woke if they're using it in the context in which I grew up with it. Because I understand that it's a co-opted term that's actually a term from Black history going back way early into the early 1900s that meant a heightened level of awareness. But then it was co-opted and politicized by liberal progressives and it became something different. So when I hear it, it rubs me the wrong way. Maybe how the term equity or justice may rub somebody the wrong way. But at the same time, a conversation does not end because I hear the word woke as a negative phrase, and I hope it doesn't end because I'm using the term equity and justice to someone who does not like those words, because at the end of the call, what we're trying to do is make sure that people have a safe place to live, that their livelihoods, their families are not upended by disasters, pollution. That is my concern, not a word you use that may negatively impact me on a personal level, because this is about lives, this is about all of us, and we can't hold a value that's based in privilege more than a value that's based on people.
All right, Bob, if you are able to hear and want to jump off of that, or I can continue to pass the question to you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Yeah, so the only thing I'd add to all that Susan said is help to remain vulnerable. You know, I think the best thing you can say to somebody right of center who you want in on the climate conversation is, you know, if it's your cousin Charlie, maybe who watches a lot of Fox and, you know, is sort of out there on, you know, opposition to climate. Just say to Charlie, we need you. And by doing that, you'll really maybe know Charlie's part, because the reality here is the head will clear quite nicely about solutions, and they will come pretty quickly to, you know, a fee and dividend or some sort of approach like that, I believe. Once the heart blockage is fixed, that's the problem. The problem is in the heart, it's not in the head. And so by just remaining vulnerable or being vulnerable and saying, hey, Charlie, we need you, that's really a pretty powerful thing to do.
And then would you like to add on to other a vision of human values that can help create a different future as well.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time hearing that. I didn't quite get that. What was that?
Sorry, there's a bit of feedback. So in seeing how long it takes, how long has passed for implementing system changes like a carbon fee and dividend, do you have any advice about working intergenerationally along that sense?
About how long it's going to take and that sort of thing to get this done well?
The intergenerational values of which that would take. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, well, I think that, the reality that we've got is that high propensity voters are typically seniors. Right of center where we're focused at republicia.org, that's our toughest territory. The intergenerational help that we need is young conservatives reaching to their parents and grandparents. Back to that heart issue, they can help melt the heart of granny and grandpa because those are high propensity voters, and all politicians know that. Only Bernie Sanders believed that you could mobilize a whole bunch of young people and get them to vote. It didn't work. The reality is young people, wonderful, wonderful. They're low propensity voters though. For example, I was just yesterday with a student who is working on his parents. And that's where that otherwise low propensity voter, he's out of state, going to college here in South Carolina. He'll probably be a low propensity voter, right? Because of all those sort of barriers to his participation. But he could be a tremendously valuable ambassador to his parents and even his grandparents. So I think that's where we're focused intergenerationally most days, is empowering the young people to reach their parents and grandparents.
Thank you. And then Priscilla, I will hand you the last question. So as a young person, the notion that, oh, the youth will save us all from global warming, or this isn't going to affect me personally, so this isn't my battle or my fight, is perceived as avoiding current circumstances, deflecting responsibility, and dismissive to the broader responsibilities that all generations share. How do you propose we engage in meaningful discussions that acknowledge the need for collective action, recognizing that everyone plays a role in both the problem and the solution?
So I'll answer that in two parts. The first part being when you hear language like that, then it's time for a deeper conversation, because similar to discrimination, I mean, young people inherited this problem by being born. So it's almost like telling a person, if you're discriminated against simply because of who you are, it's your job to fix it. Well, that doesn't work. It's illogical, it's irresponsible, and it actually cannot work because this is not a one-person job or one generation job. So this requires every single one of us. So the intergenerational work will always matter. The way to make it work has to be strategic. At a point, we can talk about our human values and heart space, but we also have to be really, really strategic, similar to how Bob mentioned propensity voters, etc. So I would say, when I walk into a room, something we did, bringing people to a CCL, I should mention this earlier, to a CCL regional conference before the pandemic, we were able to bring 47 students from a small town in Alexandria, Louisiana to the conference, and they were from a lower income, majority Black school, and it was so important to us to do that. But we were able to organize nonprofit leaders and mentors and teachers, folks of all age groups, and as I mentioned, the kids in middle school. But part of why that worked was because strategically that school was targeted. So I'm thinking past, present, and future. Before I go into that school, what do I know before I talk to people? I understand the historic barriers that has created the circumstances that folks have in the moment. And then in the present moment, what are they teaching about? We know that even teaching about climate is a divisive issue. Some folks consider it indoctrination, other folks love it. School politics is a thing of its own. So you have that to contend with. For the future, it's going to be these young people who will age, hopefully, that are going to carry the work forward. And what kind of jobs will they have? They might not be climate scientists. Maybe they'll work in trades. Maybe they'll take an alternative career path, which a lot more young people are choosing to do now. And if they do that, great. We need more of them in this movement. So I'm thinking about it this way. If you look at the demographics of people in the climate movement now, it is still overwhelmingly white, and it's still people who are highly educated, which we need, but at the same time, when we create a climate bubble that doesn't involve everyone from all walks of life, then the bubble is getting too heavy. It's going to burst on the ground, it will never float up and reach its full potential, and the movement stalls, and we could be so much further along if we think about it in that context of taking time to explore the past, thinking about where people are, meeting them there right now, and thinking about the future implications of the work we do and helping them to pave their paths going forward to create a more sustainable future.
That was really beautiful, thank you. And Bob, I will pass the question to you.
Yeah, and state the last part of the question is,
How do you propose we engage in meaningful discussions that acknowledge the need for collective action and recognize that everybody plays a role in the problem and solution?
I guess the thing that's throwing me a bit there is you wouldn't want to use the word collective if you're talking to the audience that we try to reach at republican.org. That's language of the left. So you want to talk about how we can bring America together rather than collective. And so it's just an example of how language is so important because the reality is most of the climate conversation has been conducted in the language of the left. It's communitarian, egalitarian language. People who on the left are people who generally believe in community, they focus on fairness. And so the language naturally follows a communitarian, egalitarian kind of approach. Well, people right of center are hierarchical individualists. They believe in working through a chain of command. They're hierarchical. And they are individualists. They believe in individual effort and individual reward. So if you say the word collective to a group that I'm trying to reach, they will switch off. So you have to sort of talk to them about, hey, this is how you're going to get the gold star. You are going to win at this. You are going to achieve. You can be able to say, what'd you do in the war day? That's so it's I think there's a lot to be learned about just refocusing as much as possible. Well, not everybody needs to do this because we of course need people. We need communitarian egalitarians, but we also need hierarchical individualists. And so we're so glad for the CCL's Conservative Caucus as they try to reach with us right of center. Because you know what you can hope for in a country. The reality is the country needs both. It needs communitarian egalitarians, people who focus on community, focus on fairness. It needs hierarchical individualists, people who, by golly, get it done kind of folk. It's sort of like we could wish for every child two parents. One who's a communitarian egalitarian. Johnny, we love you no matter what. And the other, a hierarchical individualist. Johnny, let's talk about your grades in math. The reality is the kid could use both, right? He needs both. And so the country needs both. And it's just that we need to be particularly sensitive in the climate conversation because it has now been put in the woke basket by pundits on the right of center. And so we are in a struggle to get out of that basket. It's a particularly tough year right now, in this election year, but hope springs eternal. So I hope that helps. I feel like I'm giving all kinds of discourse on language or something.
Thank you. I appreciate the feedback. I come from a very red rural area in Ohio, and like Princella, you said, like recognizing our own biases, and that's a very good lesson there. So Max, I will pass it to you.
When I think about this as far as the work, and I think about it on so many levels, going back to what I was talking about before as far as the working for the common good, I think one of the things that my values point me toward is it's not the same for everybody. When we're talking about working for the common good, the focus really needs to be on the folks that are getting oppressed and brutalized the most when we're talking about this. And when we're talking about intergenerational work and we're all responsible for this, the phrase that always comes to mind when it comes to these things is that the world we're living in and the problems we have on all kinds of levels, they're systemic, they're intentional, and they're ongoing. And if we're going to have solutions, our solutions have to at least focus on changing systems, being intentional, and being relentless in bringing about this change. So when we think about, I can imagine I'm a pastor, and I'm going way too personal, but I'll just go there. I ran for school board this past year. I've never run for a political office in my life. I did not win, in case you're wondering. But one of the conversations I had with somebody was with a very right-wing white guy who immediately, when we started talking, just immediately started using homophobic, transphobic words. And my approach to him, kind of coming from what Princella and I have been talking about, and he used the words of Christian faith. Well, what I started talking to him about was Jesus and what Jesus taught, and actually what Paul taught, that Jesus said the two greatest, I'm not going to preach, I promise, but just to explain it, that Jesus said the two greatest commandments were to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbors yourself. And that Paul took it even farther in Romans and Galatians, saying the entirety of the law is summed up in one commandment: love your neighbors yourself. And then we went on to talk about policies and stances that he was initially in favor of that are going to intentionally harm children in our schools. If we're targeting students who are trans, who are LGBTQIA with policies. And I don't know, I'm pretty sure you probably still didn't vote for me, but we got to the point where we said, yeah, we shouldn't do things that are going to harm people. And I think that's the conversation to have, is that we work on where people are coming from values-wise. And and I will disagree as a parent. I don't think radical hierarchical individualism, it has anything to do with parenting a child well. I think communitarian egalitarianism can talk about grades just fine. And we can have people that are raised generationally with different values than I would absolutely say that I was raised with. I was raised in, talking about Senator McCain, my county in Alabama was in the top 7 nationally of percentage of people who voted for McCain over Obama in that election. That's the origin that I come from. But the way we talk about this intergenerationally is to acknowledge that we're going to have differences, is to acknowledge that we're not on the same page politically and even language-wise, but we can't talk about Do we want a planet that's going to be sustainable? Do we want people to have lives that are going to be livable? And do we want, what do we want our legacy to be? And let's be clear about it. Folks my age and older, I know my youthful good looks are deceiving, but I'm 58. Folks my age and older, it's on us. We've been primarily responsible for this, we've created this, and we sure as hell need to be doing something about it.
Thank you so much. We wanted some time for Q&A, so we have two wonderful William & Mary students with, they have microphones. One's going to be in the back, one in the front. So when you're ready, raise your hand and we'll put them in order. I did want to just surface this interesting conversation that I've heard in terms of the power of words and also context. So I will add to this conversation context about parents and what kind of parents. I think it really depends on context, given that there's a wide range of kids to raise. So I think I want to delve deeper into context, but also maybe into words. One of the words discussion that caught me, Max, was when you talk about nice. Well, I grew up in Minnesota nice, right? And Minnesota nice meant you just said nice things to people. It'll be okay, right? And you didn't really dig under the fact that there are problems down there. And so I wanted to so I've been thinking of using the word kind instead of nice. So kindness to me means thinking long term. Nice is just, well, it was nice to meet you, Priscilla. Goodbye, I'm not going to interact with you anymore. Kindness is more like how can we work together for a better future? And how do we go through this difficult part of just getting to know each other? And maybe sort of cringing at some of the words we each use that we disagree with, or maybe finding a better time to talk about those difficult things that get reaction from us. So I'd love to get some comments. Priscilla, if you have lots to say.
No, I won't say a lot for the sake of time, but what I will say is adding on to Sabrina's point and something that was mentioned earlier, I think you all are witnessing in real time what it looks like when the conversation begins to get differential or a little uncomfortable, and that's okay. What's happening is we're still having the conversation. So for example, Bob can say woke all day long, we can say equity and justice all day long, and we can continue to keep talking and eventually get to a solution. So that's all I wanted to add on that point.
Okay, here's our first question. If you'll just state your name and your question.
Yeah, I'm Linda Vernoy from Washington, D.C. I was just talking to some people from Virginia over here earlier, and they were talking about some places where renewable energy projects have failed. So my question's for Bob Inglis. How do you deal with the reality of areas in certain counties in Virginia, for example, that are turning down renewable energy projects, not respecting individual property rights of people who want to lease the land to solar developers or sell the land to solar developers?
Yeah, it's the strangest thing, isn't it? Here's what I'm understanding. I'd be interested to know if this is what's happening in the circumstances you're talking about, which is that what I'm hearing from compatriots who are doing this kind of work, renewable energy deployment build out, is that when farmer A gets the contract, farmer B, who didn't, is really upset. Farmer B goes to county council and tries to get a ordinance passed blocking the construction of solar panels. And so it's really a tough situation because farmer A, of course, he or she wants the solar farm. I think it's growing pains, don't you? I mean, I think it's what we're going to have to get through. Is there are going to be situations like that where a county bans of deployment, and then there's going to be some county that does it and it does well, and the revenue starts flowing into that county because you can structure it in various states so as to get a lot of revenue out of solar installations. And then the county that banned it will wake up and they'll unban the ban. I think it's a little bit like, I'm certain that when Henry Ford rolled out his Thin Lizzy, there were a lot of horse and buggy people who did everything they could to stop those things. There were good reasons too. The Thin Lizzy scared the horses shot, people were hurt, maybe people were killed. The Thin Lizzys blew up, the tires blew off, all kinds of troubles. But ultimately, Henry Ford won. And so I'm certain we're going to win with the deployment of renewables. But there will be these bumps, and I think the best advice I can give there is just buckle up and really try to persuade the particular county that, hey, the county next door is going to do real well with this. We don't want to be left out.
Thank you, but that's kind of loud. Okay. We have our second guest speaker. Here we go. Please introduce yourself.
Peter Handler from Philadelphia. Bob, a question for you. Back to the personal and intergenerational. I remember from years back your own story about when you decided to return to Congress and your son coming to you.
Want to tell that story?
So I wonder if you could talk about that in terms of, the young leading the older into recognizing for you climate and the direction you've gone in since.
Yeah, I really do think, as I was saying earlier, that kids can be the most effective ambassadors to their parents and grandparents. I realize that not all the time does that ambassadorship work. If you want to see an example of that, The Years of Living Dangerously has an episode called The Pastor's Daughter. It's about Anna Jane Joyner trying to convince her dad, Rick Joyner, a megachurch pastor, to come around on climate. It hadn't worked for Anna Jane. So sometimes it doesn't work, but I think more often than not, it does work. And of course, in my case, the first step of my metamorphosis on climate was my son coming to me, but maybe I'm a little bit unusual because, a lot of sons are trying to grow up to be like their dad or something. Well, I'm trying to grow up to be like my son. He's good looking, he's smart, he's fun, he's funny, he's all those things. So I'm trying to grow up to be like Robert. So maybe I was more inclined to hear from him. But poor Anna Jane is having some difficulty with her father, Rick. But I think what it is a bond of love. And that bond is the thing that I think is most powerful in this, and that's so what I'd say to people is just, if you're young, hang in there with your parents, even if it isn't a quick metamorphosis, your persistent loving of them will make a difference, and that's back to that very first question, I guess, about how this may turn out to be a long process.
Okay, sorry, we only have time for one more question. If you'll just state your name and your question.
Zanis Talley from Richmond, Virginia. I always see environmental issues as being burdened by two horrific characterizations. One is that the problem is existentially global, and two, that it's existentially dire. And so I know we've been talking a lot about how to bring people out of the margins, right? And how to face these issues that are in front of us. And so if I can, on this last question, ask you, for one, a piece of optimism, and two, a practical way in order to move this issue forward. Thanks.
Up here at this table, we would just like to thank you for that question. As Princella, I'm going to kind of quote you. Princella pointed to the microphone and looked at me and said, "I would like for you to take that. Why don't you take that?" You know, the thing that I think about with that, I could pull up the quote, but I won't. But I can put it up on social media. One of the quotes that guides me in thinking about so much work is from an essay by Ta-Nehisi Coates in his book. We Were 8 Years in Power, and he talks about that probably our future is not good. That probably tragedy is our end, but that doesn't move him to not work for a different outcome and to continue, as he put it from his context, screaming into the waves like his ancestors did. And for me, the reality is that all we have, say it from a faith perspective, I'll say it from a climate perspective. I won't use my faith perspective. We don't need to look around to create something new. All we need to do is look around in our communities to say, okay, who is doing something in our community to do something about climate change, or in our neighborhood, or in our town, or in our state, and then join in. That's what we can do as far as what we can do individually and take action. The second thing is the hope is because we don't control the future. All we can do is do what we can do and work together. And a lot of times I've found the community that we build in this process and the relationships that we build and the work that we do is its own reward. That's not why we do it. We're working for other things, but that, for me, that's the hope. Is that people can change. I mean, Bob has talked about it. I've talked about it. Kinsella's talked about it. Helen's talked about it. Everybody up here came from a very different perspective than where we are now, and the work we're doing, and that's the hope as well. So it's joining in practically with folks around you that are already doing the work, and looking at it clear-eyed that, yeah, this is monumental, yeah, it's existential, and it's absolutely the case that things are going to get worse before they get better. But that does not mean that we don't keep on working and hoping and joining together for the sake of ourselves, for the sake of everybody else, and for the sake of whoever comes after us.
Thank you.
Just something that I would add in that practical realm that you were asking for is the European Union is about to teach the United States about this thing. October 23, companies like Nucor Steel in the little part of South Carolina had to start reporting emissions to the EU. Starting in 2026, their carbon border adjustment mechanism is going to make Nucor Steel, if it's importing steel into the European Union, pay the European fee or carbon tax or buy carbon credits. The lights are going to come on in the U.S. Capitol. When Nucor Steel calls up Nancy Mace, First District Congressman, and say, hey, Nancy, you realize we're paying to Europe a tax that you could have collected here. Makes no difference to us. Makes no difference to our customers. And then the big lights are going to go on as the United States Congress realizes, oh, we could do that to China. So it's a very practical thing that's going to happen in 2026 is we're going to start paying, American manufacturers are going to start paying to Europe carbon tax. They could have collected here. And so it's a real momentum maker, we think, but that's 2026. We've got a ways to go.
We are at time, so now there will be a quick intermission, but if you would thank me one more time for having such wonderful curiosity and innovation.
Thank you so much. That was a lovely compliment panel. Thank you, Helen, for doing this.
Good to be with you.
Thank you. So we do have a 10-minute break, and during this 10-minute break, we'll play a bit of intermission video, but I wanted to highlight what's going to happen at 10 o'clock.
Microphone.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so at 10 o'clock, we have 3 sessions. Here we have Introduction to Intergenerational Climate Advocacy. So this is a workshop ideal for anyone interested in learning more about CCL and intergenerational work. It will be headed by Noah and Olivia, who are back there holding the microphones. In classroom 1082 is using media for climate engagement, the old and the new. And that's going to be facilitated by Chris Wiegard and Courtney Hand. Can you two get up? Yep, so that you know where they are. And then classroom 1088, we have this wonderful workshop, working toward intergenerational group leadership. You meet 4 leaders who have forged together paths that will challenge societal definitions and inspire you to see your own leadership potential in unexpected areas. And that again is an intergenerational panel with Ann Regan, Megan Zimmerman, Ben Hurley, and Peter Handler and Michelle Kozak. And Peter is here and Michelle is organizing her session at room 1088. Okay, hope that helps you figure out where you need to go, right?
Hey, before we leave, can I do one more thing? Let's thank Helen for facilitating this. Great job.
Clifford, I did just about the EV thing before. I'm really, GM's having difficulty getting their act together. Their Ultium platform, whatever that is, seems to have hiccups in software. The Blazer is that. But the Equinox EV it was supposed to come out last fall. Sometime this year. I'm really looking forward to that as something just above Bolt level, but affordable, starting at 35. If the tax credit is, if it's tax eligible, that puts it into the high 20s. So, and it looks really nice. It looks far nicer than a Bolt. Bolt is a dorky little bubble car kind of, but it's very
Equinox. Okay.
the Equinox. Yeah, that's been around. That's one of GM's most popular models, but they're gonna.
Is that gonna be a sedan or a SUV?
It's a small SUV.
Small
It's a
SUV.
small
Okay.
SUV. Yeah, it's in the RAV4 kind of into that class.
Okay.
So it's I think after the 2 pickups, which are the top sellers of all the big 3, it's the next best-selling GM vehicle.
Okay.
So anyway, I'm looking forward to that. I hope that works out well. So
yeah.
Anyway, another option, Model Y, kind of. Yeah, Model Y has come down to
A great deal, right?
Price-wise,
Right.
with the credit, is it under 40? I think it's possible to get it about that, right?
I think so, right.
Mid-40s for
there's been some new laws put forth by Treasury, which is now limiting the number of Teslas that qualify. So a bunch of Model 3 models that used to qualify no longer qualify. The Nissan Leaf no longer qualifies.
The Leaf?
Leaf doesn't qualify anymore.
I don't think that's a new law. I think that's the IRA. The IRA had gradual increase every year of more domestic content or
This
less.
just happened this year. It's the I'm going to be presenting the IRA presentation later this afternoon.
Okay, I'll be there.
There's something called foreign entities of concern. So if these foreign entities of concern, and that's going to be North Korea, China, Russia, and Iran. If any of them had anything to do with either the components or the minerals, then it's not eligible for the tax rebate.
Was that not in the IRA? And it was a graduated increase over years. That was my understanding. That's not a new law.
No, it is
because
new.
We have mixed, but it ramped up on January 1st because we're now 2024, so it's a higher percentage.
That was having to do with higher percentage of components and higher percentage of minerals.
Yeah.
That was part of the
That's
IRA.
different. Okay.
This is brand new.
Okay.
It's called FEOC, Foreign Entity of Concern. And so the Chinese, of course, have done a great job of cornering the lithium market. And so if the Chinese are involved in either the components or the minerals, it doesn't qualify. That's why some of the Tesla models don't qualify. That's why the Leaf doesn't qualify anymore. And also the Mustang Mach-E doesn't qualify anymore.
it's made the Y less expensive with its credit than the 3, which it was always significantly higher.
Right.
Not all the 3s. I think performance or something will make the long range still.
Yeah, I've got a list of them. I'll show in my presentation what qualifies. There's actually a DOE EPA website that you can go to. It shows you which ones qualify. So, anyway.
You ever heard of Aptera?
No.
I'm a reservation holder. I'm sort of like I'm very zen about it. If it happens, it happens. It's a startup.
Oh.
And it's bizarre. I'll try to see if I can pull up a picture of one. It's a 3-wheeler. They designed it entirely for efficiency. Nothing matters except efficiency. And they claim that it'll get 10 miles per kilowatt hour, where the best ones now are about 4. But you look at it, you go, yeah, that makes sense. Because it weighs 2,000.
Yeah, they're you see the swirly for Google Chrome? There should be in there. I gotta move this. Looking for a particular room? Yep, I'm going that way. Actually, I think I'm going 1088. Yep, we're this way. It's a little bit of a walk, but
It looks like we have a person there. They don't escape outside.